Thank you so much for the invitation. It is a pleasure to participate in this seminar. I will talk today about the economic aspects of automation technologies in travel, tourism, and hospitality. It is the whole presentation is based not on one particular publication, but on several publications. I decided to talk about the economics of automation technologies because currently we see a lot of research that is done on automation in tourism. Whether we talk about kiosks, robots, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, whatever. A lot of research on different types of technologies. This research was largely based on what tourists think about the different technologies, or whether they can be implemented in a particular company, etc. However, what I can firmly say is that research largely overlooks the economic aspects of technology. They are important because at the end of the day, whether tourists will be using a particular mobile application or not depends first on the company. The company needs to see the benefits of having this application in the first place. The company needs to see the economic benefits of using kiosks, of using robots, of using artificial intelligence in various forms, for example, as chatbots, autonomous vehicles, whatever. That's why the economics of automation technologies is vital for the whole implementation of these technologies, not only in tourism context, but also in any industry. I will share my screen now. So, do you see the screen? The slide share? Just nodding is enough because I see you on the screen as well. Okay, thank you so much. So I will pay attention in today's presentation on the economic fundamentals of the use of realiza technologies in travel, tourism, and hospitality. Well, realiza stands for robots, artificial intelligence, and service automation. So I deliberately use this abbreviation because it is a very sexy female name in Slavonic languages. Then I'll focus on cost-benefit analysis of use of realiza technologies in tourism, and specifically the impact of these technologies on operations, marketing, human resource management, finance. Then I'll pay attention whether human employees and realiza technologies, whether they are substitutes or complements. And finally, the future skills of travel, tourism, and hospitality employees that they need. The economic framework of the use of automation technologies in tourism and hospitality. This is the framework which Craig Webster from Ball State University and I developed, and it's published in the book Robots, Artificial Intelligence, and Service Automation in Travel, Tourism, and Hospitality, published by Emerald 2.5 years ago. And this framework shows what's the relationship between the tourist markets and the production factor markets in relation to human employees and automation technologies. Because the figure is too large, I split it into two parts. The upper part shows the tourist market and tours and companies' business processes. We have the demand for tourism products by the customers. When they purchase them, they become, and when they start using these products, they become tourists. We have our company, TTH company, Travel, Tourism, and Hospitality company. We have the competitors. Within each company, we have four functional areas which form the main business processes in it. These are the operations, human resources, finance, marketing. these same processes are implemented in our competitors. If we perform better than our competitors, we are more competitive than them, and we will have better financial performance measured in different metrics. Most often, compulsory, this is the profit, the profitability, but also a wide scope of other metrics. And demand is influencing our company, but also our competitors. There are different mechanisms through which the demand, the tourists, can influence the adoption of automation technologies, but three of them seem as most important. The first, this is the service process participation. This is the mechanisms through which the demand influences operations, whether tourists participate in the service delivery or the delivery is entirely implemented by the human employees of the company. This is important because it influences not only the quality, which is another way that another way in which the demand shapes the business processes, but also because this directly influences the financial performance of the company, and also transfers the responsibility for some of the activities and the implementation of some of the tasks to the customers. The other mechanism, this is the perceived service quality. What do customers think about the service, about the automated service that the tourist company provides? What they think about the robotic service, about the quality of the services provided by the chatbot, by the kiosks, etc. And if they think that that the quality that these automation technologies is inferior compared to the quality of the service provided by human employees, then they will be less willing to use these services, and definitely will be willing to pay much less. Which is the third important mechanism, the willingness to pay. How much money are tourists willing to pay for fully or partially automated tourist services? If tourists, for example, prefer to receive a discount or for the service, then the question arises: how much is it worth using? Is it worth offering these services to tourists because the cost savings that we can have from implementing these technologies in our company may be offset by the lower willingness to pay by the customers. What we currently see is that nearly all publications in the field deal with the concept of willingness to pay more. Whether tourists are willing to pay more for robotic service, for chatbots, for kiosks, etc. However, because these services are largely perceived as innovative, as we will see on the next slides. But my personal belief, and what the research that Craig Webster and I implemented definitely shows that people largely perceive robots and other automation devices as cost-saving devices, and they want these cost savings to be transferred to them. So if tourists, how much tourists are willing to pay for the service is important, because it directly influences the financial performance of the company. Now, when we decide whether to use automation technologies or not, we need to implement cost-benefit analysis. And this cost-benefit analysis will be in different directions, which we will see on the next slides. But it will be influenced by, its decision will influence the behavior of our company. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, I listen.
You know, the previous slide, what you
Yes.
said there, the framework.
Yes.
You have the assumption there that this is, this is already a functioning market, in the sense that you have there a service, and I don't know, whatever the tourism service that we're talking about, and somehow there automation services comes there for helping in something to provide that services. Maybe you increase the competitiveness or something like that. But when you look now on how many implementation of automatization services are done, are more in the sense of innovation. So they are somehow creating service that before they didn't exist, and indeed sometimes they are changing markets. So in that sense, this framework is somehow missing, if you like, or the innovation side of the automation services. Unless that you are considering innovation has a reduction cost processes. So and you are putting, innovation just has a reduction in cost.
Well, that's a great question, and it is discussed on the next slides when we talk about marketing and operations. Okay. So practically, we can have different types of innovation. Some of these can be incremental, so that it is we have a company and we just a hotel and we introduce the kiosk to help the employees. Right. So this is an enhancement. But then we can have something which is completely radical innovation when we have a completely automated service and we start from scratch. So it's not an existing hotel, but it's complete, but it's a new one. So whether we have incremental or radical innovation, or depending on the framework the innovation framework that we use, it doesn't matter. Practically, we always have demand. We always have competitors. The things that change are the scope of the competitors. Because if we, for example, if we have a 5-star hotel and we introduce a room service delivery robot, this will be innovation within an existing company. So this innovation will decrease the costs. Will give some entertainment element into in the service, but this will probably not radically change who our competitors are. But if we start a new hotel, which is completely automated, even if we offer if we offer, how to say, very efficient service and service which is of high standard, probably we will change. We will have a completely different scope of competitors to which we need to compete, because our market positioning will be different, but the willingness to pay of the customers will be different, and the way they perceive the product will be different. But practically nothing within the framework will change, because the components will be exactly the same. Because again, we will have competitors. Again, we will have business processes like marketing, operations, human resource, finance. Again, we will have customers' role in the service process. Whether this will be to what degree they deliver the service to themselves, like the self-service, or whether they are served or whether they serve themselves. And also the willingness to pay does not disappear. The perceived service quality does not disappear. The things that will change will be within the marketing and within the operations. So it will be largely the things the innovations part will be there. So yeah, thank you. But this was a really very important remark, and it is it's really important. Many companies, many hotels that introduce robots, they rely on the innovativeness of the service, in order to attract more guests. But Our research shows that guests consider this not so much as an innovative service, but as a cost-saving device for the hotels. So tourists think that the motivation of hoteliers to use robots is not to create experiences for them, but to save their costs. So tourists are conspiracy thinkers. Yeah. Okay, thank you. This is the lower part of the framework. It looks at the production markets, production factor markets. If our cost-benefit analysis shows that we need to use realiza technologies, automation, then we create demand for realiza technologies on the realiza markets, which faces the supply. And the supply will be characterized by the technical characteristics of technologies, required user skills, prices, etc. If we, on the other hand, if we decide to use human employees rather than automation technologies for particular tasks, we create demand for human employees on the labor market, which is characterized by number of employees available on the market, the wages that we need to pay, etc. Of course, there are other characteristics there, but we can't include everything on the framework. It will not be readable. There are mutual influences between the supply of human employees and the supply of realiza technologies. For example, we need to consider what skills are required that users have in order to be able to use these technologies in the hotel, in the tourist company, the hotel, for example, and what skills do human employees actually have. If, for example, these technologies are very complicated and you do need a PhD degree in robotics, then forget. This room service delivery robot has to be extremely easy to use with just a couple of buttons, because you don't have people with a robotics background at the reception of the hotel. Also, what the prices, what we see in the last decade is that the prices of automation technologies are plummeting. One humanoid robot was over 20,000 euros just 6-7 years ago. Now it is within the range of 12,000-15,000 euros, much cheaper. But what happens with the wages? That's not the case. Wages actually increase because of different factors. The relationship between the human employees as a production factor and realiza technologies is a relationship of substitution versus enhancement. And this relationship is influenced by different factors like productivity, marginal rate of substitution, different types of costs like total, fixed, variable, average, marginal costs, economies of scale, economies of scope, service capacity, de-skilling, upskilling of jobs, automation of tasks versus automation of jobs. And I will pay special attention to some of these later in the presentation. Now, when we deal with, when we implement the cost-benefit analysis, we need to consider both financial and non-financial benefits, financial and non-financial costs. And of course, this needs to cover all the business processes within the organization, like marketing, operations, human resource management, and finance, which we already mentioned, but also external impacts like impacts on society. So why should realiza technologies be adopted? What are their benefits compared to human employees? They work 24/7. Now, if we want to have a 24/7 open reception, I have a question for you. What is the minimum number of receptionists that we need? The minimum number of receptionists that we need in order to have a 24/7 reception in a hotel. Just, you may write it in the chat.
One.
Well, you may try. I'm pretty sure that after 24 hours of work, the eyes of the receptionist will start closing. So the person will not be able to cover 168 hours. Yeah. Anyone?
Well, that's three. You know, depend on the legislation of every country and things like that. But
yeah, practically six. Practically 6 is the correct answer, because people work for 40 hours a week on average in different countries. You can have more. This means that you need 4.2 people in order to cover 24/7 reception, which means 5. Yeah, you can't have 0.2 people. But these people, although you can have fractional income, but if you have, but when you consider also the sick leaves, annual paid leaves, etc., and also unexpected circumstances that can always arise when someone leaves, etc., you practically need 6 people in order to cover a 24/7 reception. 5 without 5 being on the edge of legislation, 6 for normal operations. So, but how many kiosks do you need in order to have a 24/7 reception? Self-checking kiosk. 1. You need just 1. And one such kiosk is at the price of several hundred euros. So,
you know, it's always fun because you put the kiosk, but on the side there is a person there helping you to use the kiosk.
Yeah, you always have this learning because new technology, people usually do not get used to the new technologies quite easily. Even with the smartphones, we needed time in order to learn how to use our thumbs. Also, recent technologies, they could implement various tasks and expand the scope of with software and hardware upgrades. Just install a Spanish version of your Bulgarian kiosk and it will speak Spanish. Recent technologies, they could provide constant and improving quality of their work. So a room service delivery robot will always will provide the service in the same way. They fulfill their work correctly and in a timely manner. They could do routine work repeatedly. How many days can we flip burgers in a fast food restaurant before we start losing brain cells? Probably a couple of weeks. After that, it will be detrimental for our IQ. Also, recent technologies, they do not complain, get ill, go on strikes, spread rumors, discriminate, quit job without notice, show negative emotions, shirk from work, and all these fantastic human qualities that create nightmares for human resource managers. And if we ask ourselves why there are no strikes in Star Wars, simple. This is what Chef Palpatine would have said in episode 3, but he said something else. But this is, I'm sure, what if he researched automation, this would have been his thoughts. Every strike of human employees is a pathway towards their substitution by automation technologies. This is the reality, regardless of what we believe. So, what are the positive impacts? Financial point of view, labor cost savings. They, because they work 24/7, they may serve numerous customers simultaneously. Definitely, when we talk about chatbots, one chatbot can serve numerous customers simultaneously and save a lot of man hours. In the latest issue of Robonomics Journal, there's one article with 3 case studies, 3 practical case studies of chatbots in different companies. So you may go and download it. It's open access. And increased sales because customers' curiosity in seeing the robot, 24/7 availability, etc. Operations, benefits for the operations. Easier scheduling and planning of operations because these technologies work 24/7, do not get ill, complain, shirk from work, etc. Also, they save employees time from performing dirty, though dangerous and repetitive tasks. So they could use their time for more creative and revenue-generating activities. Also improved sustainability of operations, like reduced use of resources, reduced waste, elimination of unnecessary activities. Just think about movement detectors in the corridors of hotels. They can increase the luminosity of the lamps in the corridors only when they detect movement in the corridors. Otherwise, the corridors will be dim. With the current electricity prices in Europe, this is quite important innovation. Racer technologies from a marketing perspective, they lead to increased role of the consumer in the service delivery, prosumer and consumer. So this is the consumer is transformed into a prosumer, producer and consumer simultaneously, which leads to co-creation of value. This is because part of the responsibility for the service delivery is transferred to the customer. It's his or her initiative, and he or she needs to follow the procedures for the delivering of the service. Also, Racer technologies, they allow for automated pricing, personalized pricing, marketing automation, predictive analytics, better forecasts, etc. Now, personalized pricing, which is the perfect price discrimination, this is the dream of economists, but we have to be extremely careful because in many countries, including in Bulgaria, this is forbidden. And products that are essentially the same have to be sold at the same price. If you provide some level of personalization, this means that there should be some changes in the product. The company also boasts positive word of mouth, and because of its image as an innovative high-tech company. So here comes the innovation and the influence of innovation. When we have the positive word of mouth, this will attract additional demand. Also, automation technologies, they could enhance the perceived service quality through new interactive ways of service delivery or communicating or engaging with customers. For example, they can these technologies, they can communicate in different languages, and also they can create value for customers by making the process funny and entertaining. So if you have vacuum cleaning robots at home, as we do at home, please don't do this with the babies. Also, from a human resource point of view, these technologies currently enhance rather than replace employees. And they solve some of the problems with hiring and firing employees, especially the seasonal ones. How do we hire a robot? We sign a contract with a company for renting it, for example, or we buy it. How do we fire it? We turn it off. That's it. We don't need. But this is not the case with human employees. And also very important from human resource point of view, Racer technologies help create decent work environment. This is very important because we all know that work in tourism is not always quite decent, with long working hours and quite dirty and dangerous work. By the way, this is one fantastic article written by colleagues at the University of Surrey. And from me personally, it has the best title. If you have access to it, please read it. Also, Racer technologies, they would require reorganization of companies, like new departments, new job positions, communication links between them, new tasks for human employees, which often leads to improving of organizations as well. Now, what are the costs? Why should Racer technologies be avoided? Because they lack personal approach. That's it. If you order room service and this is delivered through a room service delivery robot, the service is always the same. The robot will tell you that you are the greatest person in the universe, but the robot will say the same to every single customer. Also, robots can orientate, at least for the moment, only in structured situations. Structured situation means that it is easy to describe the situation. So it's not messy environment. there are not too many people and too many items in front of the side of the robot. And also, these technologies, they lack creativity. The negative impacts. Financial point of view, huge financial costs for acquisition, installation, maintenance, software update, upskilling human employees, for creating robot-friendly facilities, because the robot needs to move around, which means that there should be no doorsteps, no doors that need to be pushed or open with handles, because they will hinder the movement of the robot. But also important, insurance costs for damages caused by and on robots, because robots from financial and accounting points of view, they are assets, which means that they include it in the asset parts of the balance sheet. So they have to be insured. But on the other hand, they are autonomous. They make autonomous decisions, and they may cause damages. That's why we need also insurances for damages caused by them. One of the major problems by using automation technologies is the so-called vendor lock-in effect. This means that once we start using a particular piece of technology from a particular supplier, it's difficult to switch to another supplier. Because, for example, we use robots from one supplier, but then if something breaks with this with the robot, we can't use in most cases we cannot use parts from another supplier unless they are quite generic. Usually, we need to buy from the same one, and this inability of spare parts or the data that is within the chatbot, within the property management system, means that we cannot it's difficult to switch the suppliers, and this increases the switching costs, which means that we become quite dependent on the suppliers. The best solution from my point of view, this is the lease, or the so-called technology as a service. So instead of buying the technology, renting the technology. This financial-wise is quite beneficial, because you don't need to lock up sufficient amount of money at the beginning and then pay money for maintenance, but you will pay monthly fee, which will be practically a monthly expense, which will be comparable to the labor costs. From operations point of view, RISA technologies, they lead to decreased flexibility of the service delivery system. A robotic bartender will develop the cocktail, will prepare the cocktail always in the same way. You can't tell it, please put a little bit more of orange juice in the cocktail, because the expression a little bit more doesn't mean anything for the robot. Privacy and security concerns. These technologies accumulate a lot of data, and you don't want these data to leak somewhere. We talk about financial data, periods of stay within the hotel, prices paid, credit card details, faces of tourists, etc. Also, they will not be anytime soon completely independent of human supervision. So we will need people to maintain them. From a marketing perspective, the company may suffer negative publicity. It may be perceived as a company that puts profits before humans. This means that people may consider that the use of automation technologies, it's not because of creating experiences for them, something that I mentioned at the beginning, but for saving costs, and especially saving on labor costs. And this and they may decide to boycott the company. A natural consequence of this is the low willingness to pay. Craig Webster and I, we made research on a global study on robots in tourism, and this was one of our main findings. One of the blocks of questions was related to this one. if you were to be served entirely by robots in the following industries instead of human employees, how much would you be willing to pay for fully robotized service compared to a service fully delivered by human employees? Now, usually willingness to pay studies focus on willingness to pay more for the service. And the answers that respondents are given are I wish to pay the same price. I wish to pay slightly more or much more. Or the willingness to pay is presented as a construct in structural equation modeling. Now, this, from my perspective, this does not measure the willingness to pay. It just measures some statements from which we cannot make any conclusions about how much people are ready to pay. So in our survey, we gave them symmetric measures. We gave them options. Minus more than 20% less, which means more than 20% discount, between minus 20 and minus 10, between minus 10 and 0, and the same for the plus sign, for the price premiums. And of course, I'm willing to pay the same price was also an option. So there were 7 points, and it was quite symmetric. And people were able to, people were not asked exact amount, but because the amount might be different for the different services, but in comparison, discount or premium based on compared to the service delivered entirely by humans. And what we found is that regardless of the service, between 8 and 10% discount was requested on average. And we had a sample of something like over 1,500 respondents globally, and more than 85% of respondents were willing either discount or the same price. So very, very small share of respondents were actually willing to pay more.
So Stanislav, so
yes.
just
yes.
Sorry, there's a question. So
yes.
how much is the tip where in the place where
this is not
the tip? No, I know, but you know the tip is a custom. So how much is the tip in the places where you run this questionnaire?
Well, we don't know because we have respondents from tens of countries.
Okay.
So we have Americans, we have Bulgarians, we have people from South America, from Spain.
Okay.
So we don't know, and tips are quite culturally based. Tips in Bulgaria.
I know, but you know, if you try to rationalize that, this kind of result, you will think that that people is the willingness to pay for substitution is just the tip, because the tip is somehow a kind of a measure of your willingness to pay for being attended by a person.
Well, not always. The tip is it's not compulsory. Of course, in some restaurants you compulsory give a tip.
This is exactly why it's you know, this is exactly what, because it is not compulsory. It is exactly why it captures your willingness to pay for being, you know, attended by a person.
Yes,
even though we know that it's a coordination mechanism.
But also the level of satisfaction. Because if you're satisfied, because if I'm satisfied, I will give a larger tip. If I'm not satisfied, I won't.
I'm just trying to rationalize why people will decide it's a kind of 10%.
Well, but this one is a discount. This one is a discount.
I understand.
I also understand now where you're going, because you are right, because practically this difference of 10% discount will be equal to the 10% tip for the waiters.
Exactly.
I understand your logic here.
It's just, you know, it's just a guess. Nothing
this is, yeah, we can make a research. How much tip would you be willing to pay here, and how if it is a robot, if it is a human, and then we can compare. We can compare. Yeah, there was one recent study a few months ago on tipping robotic waiters. I don't remember what their findings, but this was also there.
Tipping, so tipping robot. That's excellent.
Yeah, yeah. It was written by American colleagues. I don't remember what the results were, but it would be interesting to recall. Yeah, but this is this was a very important remark. Thank you. And we can, and also from social perspective, the social impacts they can be they can be perceived as threat by human employees, resistance by customers and society. I've done research also on this, whether these automation technologies are perceived about automation fears here in Bulgaria. The results were that Bulgarians were quite skeptic towards automation technologies, and they were quite confident that automation is not going to replace them from the labor market. And also, these technologies, they may lead to the disappearance of whole industries with significant business and social implications, like the horses and the carriages, which means that these businesses will need to rearrange. And of course, robots and AI technologies do not spend salaries for consumption, so they don't generate some induced effect. They don't go to spa centers. So that's why when we use human employees, they receive salaries and they spend these salaries for consumption. But when we use robots, they don't, or chatbots, etc., they don't spend money for consumption. Of course, we will spend money for maintenance, for rental, etc., but this will be usually much less than the amount of money we need to spend for human employees to deliver these services. So striking the right balance between automation and human employees, it's based on the company's characteristics and culture. For example, a small hotel with 20 rooms, there's probably no need to have, there's absolutely no need to have a room service delivery robot. But one large hotel in Las Vegas with several thousand rooms may have several of these. Relative labor and technology costs, relative labor and race of productivity, the degree of technological complexity of these technologies, customers' readiness and willingness to be served by a robot or by other piece of automation technologies, the cultural characteristics of both customers and service providers. For example, if managers use automation technologies to replace employees, definitely the employees will have negative attitudes towards automation, which will be spread, which will be probably generalized towards other pieces of automation technologies. But if managers use automation technologies to enhance the human employees, then we have, people will have more positive attitudes. And of course, the safety characteristics of RISA technologies need to be considered. Definitely in the future, we will have two large groups of tourist companies, high-tech and high-touch companies. And there will be more than 50 shades of gray in between them. High-tech companies, they will offer more standardized, low-cost experience, while the high-touch companies, they will offer more service-induced experience, which will be provided by human employees. Of course, the high-touch companies, they will use human employees for the front-of-house operations, but this does not mean that they will not use automation technologies for the back-of-house operations. They will definitely use. The high-tech companies, they will automate the front-of-house operations, but they will definitely use some human employees in the back-of-house processes. So the distinction between the high-tech and the high-touch will be largely based on the automation of the front-of-house operations rather than anything else. But of course, there will be different shades of gray in between them. Now, one of the questions that is often asked is, are human employee-centered technologies substitutes or complements? And definitely this has a long history, as we can see in cartoons, so robots being presented for more than 50 years. What we need to remember is that research technologies, they have always both substitution and enhancement effects simultaneously. So both effects are simultaneous. And the balance between these depends on the automation of tasks versus automation of jobs, relative productivity of recent human employees, and the service capacity. Probably one of the most important publication in the field of robonomics is this one by Frey and Osborne. And by now it is cited more than 10,000 times. What Frey and Osborne say is that we have more than 47% of US jobs are susceptible to computerization, which means this is partially interpreted as that 47% of the jobs in the US will disappear. However, if we delve deeper into their methodology, we see that the authors deal with automation of jobs, not the automation of tasks, which is methodologically not quite correct. And it's much better to focus to deal with the automation of tasks, because this is what practically happens in business. Now, by the way, how much time do I have left? Just to know how to.
No, you have, let's say, more 10, 15 minutes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. When we automation of tasks versus automation of jobs. Now, from a human resource and operations management perspectives, each job is a set of tasks. If some tasks are automated and the set of tasks that human employees need to perform decreases, then we talk about de-skilling of jobs. So initially we had 10 tasks that need to be implemented on a particular job position. Then we have, let's say 3 or 4 of them are automated. Now we have 6 or 7 that need to be implemented by human employees. So in that case, we talk about de-skilling of the job, because fewer skills are necessary for someone to work on that job position. A job position is eliminated if most of the tasks that constitute it are automated. Hence, the substitution effect prevails. Now, this is the difference between what actually happens in business, automating tasks, and when a particular job is automated, compared to what Frey and Osborne reported, that 47% of the jobs are susceptible to automation. Now, if we can have many tasks, we can have jobs that have very few tasks that are automatable. And if they are not automated, the job will not disappear. Or probably the job will disappear if only these tasks are transferred to other job positions. If some tasks are automated, but this allows employees to increase their productivity and they have to upgrade their skills to use the new technology, we talk about upskilling of jobs. For example, if the hotel introduces a room service delivery robot, then the employees in the hotel will need to be trained to learn how to use the robot. These are new skills that they will learn. This is upskilling. Will the room service delivery robot replace them? Definitely not. So here we will have the enhancement effect that will be stronger. The other factor that shows what's the balance between the substitution and enhancement, this is the relative productivity of realiza in technologies and human employees. So if the revenue per dollar costs for realiza technologies is greater than the revenue per dollar of labor costs, realiza technologies are more productive, meaning that tourist companies will have economic stimuli to use them instead of human employees. So if the first equation here is valid, then sorry, the first inequality here is valid, then companies will prefer to use realiza technology. So we spent 1,000 euros for realiza technologies and we generate 3,000, but the same amount of labor costs will generate only 2,000. Definitely, realiza technologies are more productive, so it's better to use realiza. In the other situation, we can use labor technologies. Labor rather than automation technologies. Now, we have a bit of measurement problem here. It is relatively easy to measure the realiza-related and labor costs. The challenge here is to clearly identify which revenues come from realiza and which come from human employees, because especially when the service is provided by human employees and realiza technologies simultaneously. For example, if you order room service and this room service is delivered by a robot, now the question is how can we split the revenues between the robots and the human employees in order to be able to measure what we have here, which are more productive, whether it is the robots or the human employees. And finally, the final factor that I will pay attention here, this is the service capacity of the company. The realiza technologies, they will decrease the overall average costs to serve one customer, and their enhancement effect will prevail when first, realiza technologies expand the service capacity. For example, they expand the service capacity without the need to hire additional staff. For example, if a travel agency introduces a chatbot for booking online tours, for online booking of tours, or realiza technologies improve the utilization of the service capacity. This will be a robot for room service delivery. However, in the third option is when the marginal revenue of that realiza technologies generate outweigh the marginal costs of additional human employees. So we need to hire more employees, but at the end, realiza technologies generate much more revenue that outweigh the additional labor costs. And the focus of realiza technologies would be to make the service process more efficient, and the substitution effect will be stronger compared to the enhancement effect in the following situations. First, when a service or task has a fixed and well-utilized capacity that cannot be increased by realiza technology. For example, a hotel with a very high occupancy rate. So if a hotel has very high occupancy rate, then if we use a new a kiosk, a robot, a chatbot, they may not attract additional demand or if we have additional demand, the benefit of the chatbot revenue-wise may not be quite so important. So the focus there would probably be on saving costs. And in another situation, the substitution effect will be stronger when the maximum demand is limited by the fixed capacity of that service. For example, this is the concierge services in a hotel, because they're used by guests that are already accommodated in the hotel. And in that case, if we have a kiosk, an information kiosk, or a chatbot, digital concierge, or robotic concierge, these technologies may not attract additional number of customers for the concierge services. And finally, because to conclude this part of the economic aspect, because I see that I'm running out of time, I focus on the exact mechanism of the substitution of human employees by automation technologies, and what exactly is their impact. So let's say that we have one tourist company. For simplicity, let it be a hotel with only 3 processes: process 1, 2, and 3, and 3 job positions: job position 1, 2, and 3. And each of these processes consists of different tasks shown on the rows, and the combination of tasks on the columns forms the particular job position. When we introduce automation technologies in the company, we have different impacts on the processes and the jobs. First, some of the tasks will be eliminated. These are with the dark ovals. This means that these tasks, some of them will be completely automated, which means that they will be implemented, but they will not be implemented by human employees. Others may disappear completely. Then we will have also newly created tasks that didn't exist before the automation. For example, maintenance of a robot or inputting data into the chatbot. What happens with the processes? We will have a process that is completely automated because all the tasks were automated. Now, this does not mean that the process will completely disappear. It will be there, but it will disappear for the human employees because they don't need to do these tasks. Process 2 will be partially automated because only some of the tasks are automated, and we may even have more tasks added to it. We will have some processes that are completely unautomated and nothing will change in them in terms of tasks. And we will have also newly created processes, which will, in our case, include newly created tasks. What happens with the different job positions? Job position 1, initially, we see here on this example, it had 8 tasks, 6 were automated. So only two remain for the human employees. It's not economically sound, it's not financially feasible to keep that job position, so it's better to reallocate these tasks to another job position. Job position and this job position will be completely eliminated. Job position 2, it will be enriched with tasks from other job positions. So because some of its tasks will be eliminated, but it will need to do other tasks as well. Job position 3 will be enhanced with newly created tasks. These tasks, they didn't exist before that, which means that people working on this job position will need to improve their skills. And finally, we'll have a new job position that is created with, in this simple example, it includes only newly created tasks, but in practice, it may include also tasks that are reallocated from other job positions. And at the end, we have this rearrangement of tasks and job positions within the organization. We have process 2, 3, and 4 that will be for the human employees, and we have job position 2, 3, and 4. So as a conclusion, what we can say is that recent technologies, they eliminate tasks for some human jobs, help reallocate tasks for other jobs, and create new tasks for existing and new job positions. So for some jobs, the substitution effect predominates, while for other, the enhancement effect predominates. And this is what we need to consider when we make research about the impact of technologies. We need to consider both substitution and enhancement effect simultaneously. So I'll stop here because I have other things, and time-wise, it will take a little bit more time. But I'm ready to answer to any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Stanislav, for the presentation. It was very, very nice, very interesting. We open with Ingrid. Ingrid is one of our students of the masters. She will give you some comments and considerations about the presentation. Ingrid, please.
Hello. Yeah, hello, Mr. Ivanov. I have some comments that I would like to share with you. Can I share the screen? Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. So first of all, price implementation seems progressive from a tech point of view. but it can also create a dependency on emotionless AI, disconnecting us from human interactions. It removes jobs from irresponsible workers that complain all the time and don't get their job done properly. Unfortunately, it could also affect workers that actually value their jobs. AI makes possible taking all the benefits of technology and provide better insights into the humans that will be the ones who actually make the decision. So it can give the best decision, the best information to make the best decision possible. Then some highlights. I found fascinating the dispute on between employees versus realiza technology. We know that robots won't take over the world or the tourism sector. Employees usually get nervous when it comes to AI because they think it is about replacing them. But what it actually does is to replace non-essential workers while empowering those who remain. But they will have to learn how to use the technology properly and effectively by improving their skills. Jobs that require, as you mentioned, jobs that require emotional intelligence, communication skills, creativity, and innovation will remain in demand. The tourism industry will always have humans because people do things that a robot or a computer will never replace. Some strengths from my perspective that I found on your article, on your paper, is that it takes into account the practical implications, non-financial costs, and externalities from an objective point of view, considering all the advantages and disadvantages at the same time. It argues that companies should not adapt realiza tech blindly, but not considering their benefits, financial and non-financial benefits, would also be a mistake. Then some possible extensions. I think it would be interesting to consider also the environmental impacts through AI implementation, because you mentioned this social impacts and financial. So it would be really nice to dive into how it could affect tourism sustainability. Also, it would be great to study realiza technologies applied to tourism development in developing countries. And that would be it. Thank you.
Gracias, Ingrid. Fantastic review. What I can say is, can I just share? I will share just the last one of the last slides.
Yeah, I will stop sharing.
Second.
No,
Of the presentation. Just
for Stanislav to have a look.
So you're asking me to, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so practically, can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so this is exactly what I had on the next slide, but I need a little bit more time. I overestimated how much I can explain in 40 minutes. So definitely what we need is that tourism and hospitality programs, they need to focus on these skills in demand. Technology use, monitoring, and control, that's definite. But also complex problem solving, as you mentioned, critical thinking, creativity, originality, initiative, emotional intelligence, service orientation. That you are absolutely right, Ingrid, absolutely right. Because this is what we need. We need to transfer all the dirty, dull, dangerous, repetitive tasks to automation technologies, not to keep the human tasks for humans. Humane tasks, not human, humane tasks for humans. So anything that requires emotions, anything that requires creativity, personalization, critical thinking, analysis, problem solving, etc. This needs to be left to the humans. That's for sure. So I completely agree with you. Let me just see. Yes, we can say that we will have dependence or emotionless. We can depend on AI. We can emotionless, etc. However, what we see is huge progress in emotional intelligence in robots. And by the way, I'm currently writing a paper, especially on this the emotional side of robotics. So it's definitely important. And but be sure, emotion for the moment, for the moment, it's difficult for the robots to understand, and other pieces of technology to understand completely the emotions and to communicate in an emotional way. But in time, it will learn. These technologies will do. They will also affect workers that value their jobs. Again, you are absolutely right. But we need to consider the fact that nothing is fixed. What you learn, you are now in the master program. Am
yes,
I right?
I am. Yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
So we will meet in August in the module. But definitely, everything you will learn in terms of knowledge from the master program, will be outdated 5 years after you graduate. What you need to remember, these are the skills. This is the skill to learn new skills, and this is what is important. So if people always want to be receptionists, fine, but this is a repetitive job. It's much better to find ways to progress and to do something that is not so repetitive. And of course, in the long term, we will have many challenges in terms of technological unemployment, in terms of that will require creative solutions like universal basic income. That's for sure. But this requires a lot of discussion, so it's difficult to answer this question further. I have a separate module on robonomics in my university, which is 28 hours. It goes beyond race of technologies, tourism, and we discuss all these things, including automated decision making, robot rights, sex robots, and everything that you may consider as universal basic income. All these challenges and solutions.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer and all the information.
Yeah.
Thank you, Igni. Thank you, Stanislav. So do we have more questions or comments? I have a short.
Yeah.
Do you have some thoughts or reflections on what is the impact of this automation in the pandemic and vice versa? What is the impact of the pandemic in
Yeah.
For example, I have just the idea of what was the case in China, where they transformed most of the hotels, no? Using much more. So do you have some reflection on this?
Yes, definitely. Definitely, COVID-19 was one of the best drivers of automation in tourism. Of course, the best driver of automation in tourism, this is demography. The demographic crisis many countries experience, that's for sure. But it is a long-term driver. This is like the tide. But while COVID-19 was a significant driver, many companies were forced to automate, to digitalize. For example, we had, just 1 kilometer away from where I now stay, in our family house, we have one hotel where, in order to enter, you have, I'll show you, because I have a photo there. You need, you have a scanner, and it measures the temperature, and after it measures that if the temperature is within the limits, then you don't have a problem, you enter. I'll just share the screen with you. So do you see it?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. So this is me. This is me in the hotel. So this device, it measures the temperature distantly, and if it is below 37, you enter. If it is above 37, sorry, you are out. Then you have you have to, and of course you need to show certificates. Well, this was during the pandemic. Now, since 1 week, we don't need any certificates in the country. All measures were removed.
But this technology could remain because
this technology could remain. Not only this.
I saw it in the airport 2 days
exactly.
ago. Yeah.
Also, we have technologies we have robots for disinfection that were introduced. Not only in the hotel rooms, but mostly at airports, because for this technology, it requires a space for movement. Also, we had technologies for delivering. We had robots for delivering food and other purchases. What we saw, but this is not, this is the direct effect. This is the direct effect of this of the pandemic. We have also an indirect effect. The pandemic showed that many people, the pandemic showed to many people that tourism is vulnerable to biosecurity threats, and that jobs in tourism are not very reliable jobs. Because now you have a job, you work, then the government closes the hotels, and then you don't have a job. You stay home. So practically for 2 years, in Bulgaria, we have probably 40% of the hotels that didn't open the first year. And probably 30% that didn't open the second year of the pandemic. And this year they will open. Now the question rises, how will they find employees? Because many people decided to move to other sectors. They moved to real estate, construction, software, call centers, elsewhere. Government administration, because the government became a big employer, etc. So what happens? Where will they find employees? You have several options. One option is to import. But you have problems in Bulgaria, you have problems in Greece, you have problems in Romania. Forget about other Western Europe. Western Europeans are not coming to Bulgaria. Ukraine, yes, considering the situation now. Sorry for this, but yeah, Bulgaria welcomed 60,000 refugees. Only in the village that I stay, we have 1,000 local residents and more than 1,000 refugees. Yes, they will probably start work in the hospitality industry. Probably, some of them, but there are many industries that are hungry for employees. So companies will be forced to automate. And here we talk about an economy that is largely dependent on human labor. What happens with other countries where you have much greater level of automation?
Yeah,
tourist companies there, they will be forced to automate.
No?
Sorry?
Also for countries where the cost of labor is high.
Yes, and the cost of labor is higher, and they will have to. Probably this year in Western Europe, this will not be such a huge problem because they welcomed hundreds of thousands of refugees, which definitely will start work there. And what you have, but in the long run, people in the long run, the supply of labor is very limited in tourism. Seasonality, insecure jobs, pandemics, war, etc. Now you can imagine with all these travel bans, no Russian tourists in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Finito. Airspace closed for Russian planes. So what to do?
Russians were important for
yes, it was important. It was probably 15-20% of the market. And also there are many Russians that have property in Bulgaria. Tens of thousands of real estate owned by Russians that come, they spend money, etc. But now what will happen now with because we are very close to the war. Where I stay, our house is just 400 kilometers from Ukraine. It's
no, the shock of war will be worse than the shock of pandemic.
Of the pandemic, yes. But then that's why automation is inevitable. Automation is inevitable. And probably it will not be so complete. But let's say one hotel, instead of having 6-7 employees for reception, will have probably 3. What, if I remember, Nicolas Garrido said at the beginning, that probably we'll have we have the kiosk and we have the employee there. So we'll have human automation collaboration, not complete substitution.
Sure.
But it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Chatbots are inevitable because you need people to communicate, because there will not be sufficient number of people in the marketing departments. You will have kiosks at receptions to help the receptionists.
No, you have to take into account all these also. No, we have to take into account all these things also for education.
For education, yes.
Because we don't need more. Some type of labor will not be necessary in the future, no? Exactly.
You don't need to.
I was looking at the airport, for example. Now, most of the things are automatic. Pass of passport, automatic. So you don't have migration, no? You don't have control of the baggage because it's automatic, no? Check-in is online, automatic.
Yeah.
Put your baggage into the no. So I think particularly for this type of jobs, this will disappear in the next future.
The entry-level jobs, yes, this was also part in my presentation. The entry-level jobs, they will disappear.
Yeah, sure.
You don't need these entry-level jobs because housekeeping, part of the tasks in housekeeping will disappear. Part of the tasks in marketing will be automated. Part of the tasks at the reception will be automated. But just think about your homes.
But also Stanislav, because in Airbnb, most of the houses that when you arrive, it is automatic, the entrance.
Yes.
You have these electronic keys, no? And so you don't see the owner.
In Varna, we have one hostel which is completely automated. Everything is automated. You have only one person that comes to make the beds and to clean the floor, because this, for the moment, a robot cannot prepare the bed.
This was a tradition, I think, 20 years ago in France for the Formula 1 hotels.
Yes, Formula 1, yes.
Because
yes, I know the hotel.
Yeah. Okay, so more questions, please, or comments? Nobody? Valerio, do you want to ask something? No? Okay. Stanislav, I think in probably not now, but in the future, we will contact you also just to have a look on the questionnaire that you applied in the work, because it could be interesting to try to adopt it for this part of the world. Here we are very far from automation yet.
I have also a Spanish version of this questionnaire. So
perfect. Because I think also for the students will be something interesting. Martin, do you want to add something or?
But we can also make research. We can also make research. For example, this what Nicolas mentioned about tipping and discount was quite interesting. We had not thought in advance about this.
Yeah.
It may be very interesting.
Good. Stanislav, we are out of time now, so thank you very much. It was very interesting, the speech, and we are looking forward for the course in August. And
thank you.
And you know, if you want, you know, this seminar is always open. If you want to present, or some of your colleagues want to present here, we are open for this and very happy. So thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody for remaining to until now, and see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.
It was our pleasure, Stanislav. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.